Victorian England is often remembered as an age of strict morals, restraint, and silence, an era where sex was supposedly rare, hidden, and shameful. But this image is misleading. Sex did not disappear in the 19th century. People did not suddenly lose desire. What changed was not behavior, but language. Everyone knew intimacy existed. They simply learned not to speak of it. Older generations understood this well. Brides and grooms were not always virgins, despite the stories told later. Premature babies were quietly accepted. Weddings were followed months later by children who looked suspiciously full-term. Society noticed and chose not to ask questions. The real shock of the Victorian era was not that sex happened. It was that many women entered marriage without understanding what sex actually was, and this is only the beginning. If you enjoy thoughtful history, stay with this channel and subscribe. For a large number of Victorian women, the wedding night was not just their first sexual experience, it was their first explanation of it. Parents avoided the subject entirely. Silence was seen as protection. Modesty was treated as virtue. Knowledge was withheld. Doctors and moral guides insisted that women were naturally passive, calm, and uninterested in desire. A woman who expressed curiosity or pleasure was seen as unnatural. If she wanted sex, something was considered wrong with her. Men, on the other hand, were believed to be driven by uncontrollable biological urges. Male desire was treated as inevitable, even excusable. Female desire was treated as dangerous. This double standard shaped everything. Victorian society feared masturbation more than almost anything else. Influential doctors, including Swiss physician Samuel Auguste Tissot, claimed that self-pleasure caused weakness, insanity, blindness, and moral collapse. These ideas were not fringe beliefs. They were mainstream medical opinion. Men were warned constantly. They were advised to avoid foods believed to stimulate desire. Mustard, pepper, rich sauces, alcohol, beer, wine, cider, and tobacco. Even appetite became suspicious. Anti-masturbation devices appeared, including rings and mechanical restraints designed to interrupt erections during sleep. Pain was considered a corrective tool. Desire was something to be disciplined. Women were told their role was different. Sexual relations were permitted only for reproduction. Pleasure was not discussed. If a woman sought intimacy for enjoyment, she risked social disgrace. Marriage manuals reflected this thinking. Some advised wives to avoid encouraging affection. If a husband attempted to kiss too passionately, a wife was told to redirect the moment, turn her head, pull away, or leave the room entirely. This advice was presented as sensible and respectable. Yet behind closed doors, reality continued. Prostitution existed openly and widely, despite public condemnation. It did not disappear because demand never disappeared, especially among soldiers and working men. What changed was how prostitutes were viewed. They were not seen as workers. They were labeled fallen women. This term was not neutral. It was designed to shame and to warn other women. Importantly, prostitution was not considered liberating in Victorian England. For most women, it was not a choice. It was survival. Poverty, abandonment, lack of employment, or illegitimate pregnancy left few alternatives. Calling it freedom misses the point. For many women, prostitution was hunger with a different name. Victorian authorities treated prostitutes as a public threat, not because of morality, but because of disease. Sexually transmitted infections spread rapidly, particularly around military bases. In response, The British government passed the Contagious Diseases Acts beginning in 1864. These laws allowed police to arrest women merely suspected of prostitution. They could be detained without trial and forced to undergo invasive medical examinations. If infection was found, they were confined to lock hospitals for months. Men were never examined. Clients were never punished. Soldiers were never restrained. The system protected men and controlled women. This was justified by the belief that men were biologically incapable of restraint. Society excused male behavior while punishing female bodies. Unmarried mothers faced even harsher judgment. Illegitimate births were deeply stigmatized. Many women abandoned newborns at hospital doors, hoping to remain anonymous. In desperate circumstances, some killed their infants, not out of cruelty, but terror. The shame attached to illegitimacy could follow a child for life. Sex education existed, but unevenly. Boys were often taught basic anatomy. Girls were taught almost nothing. Many young women entered marriage without understanding intercourse, pregnancy, or their own bodies. Some did not even understand penetration. This ignorance was not accidental. It was enforced. Even Queen Victoria herself contradicts the myth of Victorian coldness. Her private letters to Prince Albert reveal affection, desire, and emotional closeness. And if intimacy did not exist in their marriage, one simple question remains. Where did 9 children come from? The truth is uncomfortable. Victorians were not sexless. They were secretive. They created strict rules, then quietly broke them. They condemned behavior publicly while tolerating it privately. Hypocrisy was not a failure of the system. It was how the system functioned. Homosexuality existed as well, but under constant danger. Before 1885, same-sex relationships were prosecuted indirectly through public decency laws. That changed with the Criminal Law Amendment Act. Private homosexual acts became criminal offenses. 11 years later, Oscar Wilde was imprisoned under this law. Marriage itself was heavily regulated. Medical authorities insisted that intercourse was only valid if both partners reached climax simultaneously, a belief that persisted well into the 20th century. Women were even told they could refuse sex if this condition was not met. Children were encouraged to exercise excessively during the day, so they would be too tired to touch themselves at night. Control extended from childhood to adulthood, from the body to the mind. Victorian England claimed virtue. What it practiced was surveillance. Sex was not absent. It was managed, hidden, punished, and denied language. The real legacy of the era is not repression, but silence. And silence always falls hardest on those with the least power. Thank you for watching. If you value history told carefully and accurately, consider staying with this channel and subscribing. The past deserves precision as much as curiosity.